You think reporting a toxic boss starts protection. Sometimes it starts containment, and the person being contained is you first. That is why so many women leave HR meetings feeling strangely exposed even when they technically did everything right afterward. They documented dates, saved Slack messages, stayed professional, lowered their voice, controlled their face, and still walked out feeling dangerous. Because the report is not entering a neutral system. It is entering a system already incentivized to manage organizational risk. And when a woman reports a toxic boss, the risk HR sees is often not the boss first at all. The risk is disruption, documentation, liability, retaliation claims, leadership embarrassment, discoverable records, and a story the company cannot fully control. Here's what actually happens. HR may sound supportive, but support and protection are not the same function inside companies. Protection usually means protecting the institution from volatility, exposure, and bad optics, even when the language sounds caring and concerned. If you understand that, your confusion starts clearing. If you miss it, you may mistake management language for justice itself. The first way HR protects the company is by turning your report into an information gathering event before anything else. That sounds reasonable, and sometimes it is. But notice who answers questions immediately, thoroughly, emotionally, and on the record first. Usually you do. You bring dates, screenshots, names, timelines, context, attempts, and vulnerable details about how the behavior affected you. Meanwhile, the boss often gets time, framing, and coaching. By the time their version appears, it sounds cleaner and safer. This is the part nobody warns you about. Your honesty creates evidence, but their position determines how it gets interpreted. HR listens for exposure points, inconsistencies, witnesses, prior complaints, and language that could later appear in an attorney letter somewhere. That does not mean they are lying to you. It means their first instinct is assessment, not allegiance to you. So, when they say, "Tell me everything," hear the deeper translation. Tell me enough so we can map our risk. The second way HR protects the company is by reframing your experience as a communication problem instead of structural power. You say he humiliates you in meetings, overrides decisions, excludes you from key calls, then blames you for missing context? Somewhere in the HR summary, that becomes interpersonal friction, conflicting work styles, or a breakdown in feedback between strong personalities. And that changes everything. A breeze attached to hierarchy can trigger accountability. Friction between peers sounds messy, mutual, and administratively manageable. Once your complaint becomes a style conflict, the company no longer has a domination issue. Now it has mediation opportunity. That is why women are often asked whether they clearly communicated their needs, expectations, preferences, or boundaries to someone abusive. It sounds fair on paper. In practice, it relocates responsibility from the person using power to the person surviving it. What makes this worse is that women are already judged for tone, so the reframe lands on familiar shame fast. Maybe you were too direct. Maybe your email looked cold. Maybe your face in that meeting appeared resistant to leadership. Now the boss is no longer being examined as a pattern. You are being examined as your response instead primarily. The third way HR protects the company is by slowing everything down until your urgency starts looking emotional and subjective. Toxic bosses often work through accumulation, not one dramatic incident. The damage comes from repetition, ambiguity, and private deniability daily. You report because the pattern has become unbearable. HR responds with process, scheduling delays, confidential reviews, and careful follow-ups. Weeks pass, then more weeks. Meanwhile, your boss still runs meetings, assigns work, speaks to leaders, and shapes the narrative. This delay is not always incompetence. Sometimes it is strategic cooling. Time reduces witnesses, softens memory, and exhausts complainants first. The longer it takes, the more likely you are to doubt yourself, over-explain, or accept a weak resolution quietly. And if you become upset during that delay, your distress can be logged as instability rather than evidence of pressure. Here's the quiet part. The process can make you look less credible simply because surviving it requires visible strain sometimes. The fourth way HR protects the company is by offering symbolic care that calms exposure without changing underlying power structures. They may thank you for speaking up, They may say this behavior is not aligned with company values or expectations. You may be offered an employee assistance program number, a reminder about respectful policies, or a check-in next month. All of that sounds humane. None of it necessarily touches the manager's access, authority, reputation, or ability to retaliate indirectly. Because symbolic care solves a public relations problem, it allows the company to appear responsive without redistributing power at all. This is why women often leave feeling strangely guilty for still being unsafe after receiving a polished, compassionate conversation afterward. They were heard, technically. They were validated, verbally. But the boss kept the same calendar access, same influence, same sponsorship. What makes this worse is that corporate culture teaches women to interpret politeness as good faith, especially under pressure there. But polished language can be a sedative. It lowers your guard while the organization stabilizes itself around the threat quietly. The fifth way HR protects the company is by managing future perception, not just the present complaint itself around you. Once you report, you are not only a worker anymore, you are a potential reputational variable inside the system now. That means conversations begin happening without you. Questions about fit, resilience, collaboration, judgment, and team impact start circulating internally quietly. No one announces the shift. It shows up as cooler Slack replies, fewer spontaneous invitations, and vaguer feedback from leadership. Maybe your manager's manager suddenly wants more detailed status updates. Maybe a project you built gets reassigned for continuity reasons. Maybe your next review mentions trust, partnership, tone under stress, or executive presence instead of the results everyone relied on. Here is what actually happens. The company starts future-proofing itself in case your complaint becomes part of a later story. If they cannot fully control the original behavior, they can at least shape how credible, stable, and promotable you appear. And this is why reporting can feel like stepping into fog. You expected investigation, but encountered narrative management instead entirely. Now, none of this means every HR person is malicious. Some are thoughtful, honest, and privately frustrated by these constraints. But individual decency does not erase institutional design. A kind representative can still serve a system built for containment first. The deeper problem is not whether HR likes you. The deeper problem is what HR is structurally responsible for there. And in most companies, that responsibility is stability, legal defensibility, executive protection, and preserving operational continuity through conflict, always internally. So if you report a toxic boss, the question is not whether you should speak. The question is how strategically. You need to understand the mechanism before you enter it, because clarity changes what you document, request, and expect afterward. First, document patterns, not just feelings. Dates, witnesses, missed meetings, contradictory instructions, withheld information, and changing standards matter most here. Second, avoid making HR your emotional interpreter. Make them your record holder by speaking concretely, calmly, and specifically there consistently. Third, notice whether proposed solutions change power or merely change atmosphere. Those are not the same outcome at all here. Fourth, protect your reputation while the process unfolds. Silence around you is data, not proof that nothing is happening yet. Keep records of exclusions, changed access, sudden scrutiny, and informal distancing. Retaliation often arrives wearing administrative clothing later than expected. Fifth, stop assuming private praise will protect you publicly. Many women are admired in rooms where they are never defended. A leader telling you "I value you" means very little if that value disappears during calibration, succession planning, or conflict. This matters because toxic bosses rarely operate alone. They survive through silence, convenience, dependency, and other people's career calculations too. HR often enters after that network already exists, which means you are not reporting one person but a protected arrangement. And protected arrangements do not collapse because someone tells the truth once, no matter how accurate that truth is either. They collapse when truth becomes expensive, visible, corroborated, and difficult to bury without creating greater institutional risk elsewhere later on. So if your report is buried, softened, delayed, or redirected, that does not automatically mean you imagined the pattern there. It may mean the pattern is real enough to threaten people who benefit from pretending it is normal every day. That realization removes a specific kind of shame. The shame of thinking confusion means weakness or bad judgment somehow inside. Confusion is often the psychological signature of manipulation inside professional environments that depend on plausible deniability and polite surfaces everywhere. You were not weak because you hesitated. You were reading mixed signals in a system designed to send them constantly. You were not dramatic because the process unsettled you. The process often depends on making you doubt your scale entirely. And you were not wrong for expecting help. You were just expecting care from a function built around control first. That is why strategic women stop treating HR as a rescue line. They treat it as a managed interface instead. An interface can still matter. It can create records, trigger obligations, establish timelines, and sometimes limit a reckless manager temporarily. But you use an interface differently than a protector. You prepare more carefully, reveal more intentionally, and trust more conditionally. You stop oversharing pain to prove sincerity. You stop assuming neutrality because someone sounds measured and compassionate inside offices too. You start asking sharper questions. What action changes reporting lines, access, evaluations, workload, meeting exposure, or retaliation risk here now? You listen closely to vague promises because vague promises are where companies store intentions they do not want tested later. And you watch what happens after the meeting, not just inside it. The aftermath tells the truth faster than language. Does your boss lose access to you or gain new scripts about you? That answer reveals the company's priorities immediately. Do leaders protect your ability to work or protect their ability to say they looked into it? There it is. Once you see this clearly, the experience gets colder, but it also gets cleaner, and clean vision is power now. Because then you stop chasing sincerity from systems built to manage exposure. You start protecting your future with precision instead. A toxic boss wants your confusion. A careless system wants your compliance. What saves you is accurate interpretation first, always. When a woman reports a toxic boss, the real test is not who listens. It is who remains protected afterward.